thank you for coming to this talk. I know you've had a lot of talks behind you. I'll try to make this as engaging as possible. I'm Duana Stanley. I'm a software engineer. I've been working for over 10 years, recently in SoundCloud and Clue in Berlin. And I think this is a really important topic because making technical decisions is such a key part of our role as software engineers. If you were to see your career as a series of the technical decisions that you made or were part of, what would that look like? Now, I'm sure that we get better naturally over time with experience, but I think we could get better faster if we explicitly learn how to get better at them. I'm Start Coffee on Twitter. I love coffee. I'm in the right city. So when I was choosing the background slides, I wanted something calming, and it ended up reminding me a bit of the art of war. And I was wondering, how would Sun Tzu write this talk? He might say, mystify, mislead, and surprise the colleagues. Sun Tzu, the art of technical decision-making. That's not really what I'm about. I like this one better. It is easy to like your friend, but sometimes the hardest lesson to learn is to like someone who disagrees with you. Sun Tzu, the art of technical decision-making. But I'm not Sun Tzu. I'm Duana Stanley. And for me, I think the art of technical decision-making is 80% the art of decision-making. We need to get these skills right. We probably already have the technical skills to make the technical part right. And I've come to think that the art of technical decision-making, the art of decision-making, is to make the decision obvious. And it takes work to get it to that point. Decision-making is maybe the hardest human activity that we can do because it involves predicting the future. And most of us don't like it. Every time I ask who likes decision-making, I only get 2 or 3 people, so I'm not going to ask. And let's talk about these fears. When I was looking for a background involving pebbles and fear, I thought this was, an interesting representation. There's this active river and a pretty solid-looking technical construction there. But, I don't know, it's kind of making me a bit anxious. And I got a bit carried away looking at pebbles. This is a river in Bali. But back to my talk. What I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to delve into the fears, because I think we need to deal with these to get better. I'm going to go over some decision-making concepts and definitions. And then I'm going to outline a process that I used with a team to make a really big technical decision about adopting a new technology. All right, you ready? Ready to jump into the river? Fear of being wrong. I think this is the biggest reason why we don't like decision-making. But there's also the fear of uncertainty, the fear of complexity, when you have 100 different options, or you have 2 options that are incomparable. You can't decide between the 2. This is terrifying for me and people like me. So for me, I thought of how can I master the fear of being wrong? And there's a common technique for mastering fears, which is changing your mindset. So instead of thinking about making the right decision, I thought, what about making a good decision? Because making the right decision, it's so static, right, wrong, pass, fail, it's so stressful. But aiming for a good decision, a decision where you've put effort in, you've done your homework, you can be proud of the effort you've put in, even if it doesn't lead to success, and you can get better over time. That's a mindset that I feel comfortable with. You can follow a process, and you can befriend the worst scenario. So there's many people like me that just blow the worst scenario out of proportion, like, oh my God, if I use, Scala, and what will people think, in the future if Scala's not used anymore? This is not really a big problem, Duana. It's fine. We can deal with it. Mastering the fear of uncertainty, information is our friend, but of course we want just enough information because time. And we can predict consequences and likelihood and see it as a bet. I really like this because making decisions is scary, but making bets is fun. We like making bets, right? We like to, oh yeah, I'm like putting all my money on this thing, and yes, it worked out. And we can get better at predicting over time, and that's a great skill to learn as an engineer. Mastering the fear of complexity, as engineers, we got this down. Our number one tool, simplify. If you've got 100 options, look for the common attributes and cluster them into 3 groups. You can also prioritize, the favorite tool of product managers. What are the most important, relevant aspects or factors of this decision? And we can identify the biggest trade-off, the favorite tool of computer scientists. Which are the 2 biggest factors that we have to choose between that will have the biggest outcome? All right, but we're not done with fears yet, sorry, because making decisions on our own is hard, but making decisions in teams is that extra dimension of having to collaborate on a decision. And for people like me who are conflict averse, there's the fear of conflict. There's the fear of arguing. So I didn't do debating in school, and I'd never want to do debating. I don't like it. I'm terrible at it. And I think underlying my fear of arguing is my fear of losing. And the reason I focus on this topic is because I was sick of having the feeling that I was losing arguments. Sun Tzu has some encouraging words here. The greatest victory is that which requires no battle. Phew, that's great. I'll aim for that. And one way I can handle to master the fear of losing is don't think of me winning as an individual or losing. Think of winning as a team. Aim to learn. And that means understanding the resistance. So if you couldn't convince your teammates of your idea, is it because maybe you need to work on your convincing techniques? Maybe you need to get more information, more case studies. Maybe you need to understand better where they're coming from and what the sticking point was for them. Or maybe the world just isn't ready for your ideas. This is the one I think. Because actually, when I looked at all the decisions I'd made, I realized that I have a tendency to come up with creative, unconventional solutions. And as software engineers, convention is a good thing. I can understand that my teammates were hesitant. Or maybe it's a political decision. Maybe there are political things involved. And whatever it is that you identify the resistance was, you can learn from that and take that to your next argument. All right, we're done with fears, everybody. Whew. Now we're going to jump into some concepts and definitions. So I talked about changing our mindset to making a good decision instead of the right decision. So what is a good decision? Let's think of personal decisions. So a good personal decision. Say I'm thinking, like, should I invest all of my savings in cryptocurrency? So a good decision is goal-oriented. What's my goal? Do I want to invest to make heaps of money? Do I want to invest so that I keep value? Reliable information. We learn that at school. Personal context. So am I about to retire next year? Or am I at the beginning of my working life? And do I have a lot of savings? Or just a bit to start off with? This makes a huge difference, especially with cryptocurrency. And a good personal decision compares multiple alternatives, right? So it's not just cryptocurrency. There's, shares, paintings, random, insert investment strategy here. But for me, most importantly, a good personal decision feels right. And I used to ignore my gut all the time because I was hyper-rational, and I was like, I'm rational, I'll just follow an argument. But I wasn't ready. There's a nerve connecting your stomach and your brain, the nervus vagus. And I've come to think that if we don't feel ready, maybe it's a sign that we need more time, that we need more information, because our brains are actually background processing machines, right? They need time to do their background processing. And even if a decision is good, it still might not lead to success because of chance. So a good technical decision is very similar. It's goal-oriented. You want to solve a problem, or you want to enable something for the business. Reliable information is very important. You take the business context into account. It's very different if you're a startup or a large organization. How many developers do you have? What are the skills in your team? What are the requirements? What's the domain you're working in? And time. Time is really important for businesses because time is money. A good technical decision makes the trade-off explicit and the risks. And I think most importantly, it has team buy-in, because I think a lot of technical decisions actually fail because of this aspect. And they were a reasonable bet. So I've been really lucky. I haven't had to make any decisions where the worst case scenario would mean that the business fails. And I was like, yeah, because there's usually like multiple viable options, and maybe the worst case scenario is that something gets rewritten, it costs the business time. But a colleague pointed out, there are cases where it can result in the failure of a business, such as there was like a high-frequency trading company that they deployed bad code and in 40 minutes lost all of their money. So thankfully, most of the decisions I've had to work on don't have that worst-case scenario. And here's Sun Tzu chipping in again. Anger may in time change to gladness. So maybe as a tech lead, you made a decision, you forced it through, your team were angry, but in time, they see the wiseness of your choice, and they're glad. But a startup that has once been destroyed can never come again into being, nor can the dead ever be brought back to life. So I'm going to use this goal. A really good technical decision is only overturned by unforeseen change, not from the tech decision maker leaving. And a great technical decision survives change. These are really hard to do, and they take probably a lot of time. So those initial Unix operating system decisions, everything is a file with HTTP protocol, how long did they actually take to make? They were amazing decisions. They survived decades of change. All right, we're going to hop into team decision-making concepts. This is a graph I made up to characterize the team decision-making capability of your team, of teams. So you can say that a team, when you're making decisions, like how fast can you make them, and how participatory are your decisions? Like this, you can graph the decision-making model according to these axes. And on the right, on the bottom, you've got an authoritative leader set up. This is good if you have a senior and a lot of juniors, or if it's an emergency. You can make fast decisions, but they're not very participatory. Then you've got a consultative leader in the upper right, where it's not going to be as fast, but it's very participatory. So you're involving members of the team highly. Then you might have a high-performing collective. So you don't have a designated leader. You're a bunch of, you're all similar, maybe in experience levels, maybe you're volunteers. But you're high-performing. You know how to work with each other, how to come to agreement pretty quickly. And then in the middle, you have like what I've called struggling collective. So maybe you're a bunch of people with similar experience level with no designated leader. Maybe you're attempting consensus, but consensus is hard and takes time. Or maybe it's ad hoc. You don't really have a process for decision-making, and things just kind of get made, and they do take time, and they are difficult. You could have a struggling leader team where the leader needs time to be able to make things efficient or needs experience. And in the bottom left corner, if you're like neither fast in your decision-making as a team, nor are they participatory decisions, I don't know where you're at, but God help you. So I guess take some time to think about where your team is at and where you want to be and what you could do to get there. A friend of mine pointed out that it's also good to understand the different argumentation styles of the members of your team. And this can make argumentation more fluid. So this is very pseudoscientific, but it's still useful. And you might be a combination of, you will be a combination of these things, but you might have a strength or like a particular color might be more dominant in you. So in the red, we've got competitive people, purposeful, strong-willed. These are the really good debaters. These are the people that I always lose against. Then you've got yellow, sociable, creative, enthusiastic. I think that's my dominant streak. I'm super enthusiastic about something, so enthusiastic sometimes that I don't see the full picture or I can't go into the detail. But I'm very also creative. There's the green, people who are encouraging, sharing. They really want things to be participatory, and they're very patient. And then there's blue for analytical, so data-driven and questioning people, people who really like to get to the nitty-gritty, look for the holes. And I think this is useful. Maybe you want to do this as a team as part of your team bonding experience to see how you can communicate well together and what each of you needs to be able to get the information or to feel good about a decision. So if I know I'm going up against a teammate who is very competitive and a good debater, I know that I need to prepare. I know that I need to have my information, my case studies, and I know that I need to tell them, hey, you're really good at debating or you're really good at arguing, but it's also really important that you understand and that give me time to tell you, like, here's how I see things. I'm going to talk about consensus because I think consensus is the thing that leads to the highest team buy-in, and it's the thing we generally strive for. There isn't a consensus on what consensus means. So I've decided to take this definition from the internet. Consensus means finding an option that all team members will support. It does not mean that all team members would select that option as their first choice. Another way of saying it for me is consensus is finding a way to move forward with a shared understanding. Consensus is obviously not coercion. So I was once in a team of 2, and we were equally experienced building a microservice. I really wanted to try out a functional dependency injection technique. I knew that the company wasn't doing that. We were doing object-oriented injection. And I kind of coerced my teammate. I was like, this is really cool. We can try it out. We can see if it works. We can be more functional. And my teammate was just like, yeah. And I kind of coerced him through my enthusiasm, right? And there were only 2 of us. Teams of 2 can be just as dangerous as teams of 1. Consensus is not pure majority rule, and I think the difference is that the minority in a consensus mode is happy to seed, understands that there needs to be seeding to, they have to seed to make progress. We need to make progress for the business. Consensus is not compromise. So another team that I was in, another team of 2, my teammate wanted us to use inheritance in a model, and I wanted to use composition. And they were a red person. And I was like, how can I fail? Like, just read the internet, like, composition is better. That was my argument. That's not a very good argument. And of course I failed. And you can't compromise. You can't say, we'll have half the code base using inheritance, or half the model using inheritance, half composition. Sometimes you can't do that, or if it's a technology or a language choice, you can't have a compromise. Sometimes you can, but not always. And consensus is not giving up. So in another situation, I was up against another red great debater, and I remember this person spent 4 hours, or it felt like 4 hours, it was probably like 40 minutes, arguing with me why we needed to get rid of the cache layer that I'd put in. And I wasn't convinced, and I gave up. I can't argue. Yeah, just do it, whatever, fine. But it actually turned out to be a good decision. We really didn't need that cache layer. But yeah, consensus is not giving up. It's really expressing your consensus, because you want to win as a team. You've got to have all the team equally engaged and involved, if possible. At least strive for it. So yeah, strive for consensus. Have a fallback, because it's hard. Interestingly, open source collectives have to deal with this all the time. How do you, as a group, decide on technical decisions? And some friends pointed out these amazing resources. Wikipedia have to do this as editors, and Prometheus is an open source monitoring tool. They also reference other open source projects who talk about how to do this. It's a great resource. All right, we're done with definitions. How are we feeling? Do I have to dance more? All right, great. I got some thumbs up. Yes. Consensus. No. All right. So let's get on to this process. This is for a big technical decision. So feel free to adapt this. And sometimes you won't need to have a process. It really depends on how much time and the consequences and the impact of the decision. And I'm an etymology nerd, and calculus means a method for calculation or reasoning. And calculus comes from like the Latin word for pebble, or ciottolo, is that right? Yes. Okay. So that's why I have pebbles everywhere. So let's a quick recap of, a quick overview of the process, and then I'll go into the step-by-step issues. We want to understand the decision as a team, really delve into what this decision means and the different aspects of it. We want to check our emotions. We think we're super rational, but we love and hate programming languages, right? We love and hate dynamic or static typing. Like, we have emotions as programmers. 3, list our options. 4, evaluate options. 5, are we ready to decide? Do we need more info? 6, build consensus. 7, sleep on it if possible. And 8, document it. And this is a collaborative process. So I did this with a team at my last company. We had to make this huge decision that would have had a big impact for the whole team. We were thinking of adopting a new technology. So we really wanted to have all team members involved. We stood in front of a whiteboard and we had stickies, and we ended up having like 3 workshops, about 1 and 1.5 hours each, because it was a big decision. And again, the goal here is make the decision obvious as a collective brain when we're doing team decision making. The example I'm going to use today is, should we use Ruby on Rails? And don't get too bogged down in an example, it's just an example. So step 1, let's understand the decision. So when someone comes and says, should we use Ruby on Rails? For what? For the next project? For the whole organization? What are we talking about? Here's some questions you can ask. So what is the goal or problem? So someone's just come and said, hey, there's this new technology, let's use it. What is it solving, or what is the opportunity? So the opportunity, for example, say we're a Java shop, and we've been using like really old Java technology, JSPs, I don't know, JSF, it's been a while. And it's getting clunky and hard, so maybe the goal or the problem is painful development, and the goal is faster development, right? What is the cost of delay? So say this is a decision for the next big project. Well, the company wants us to get started straight away on the project. We don't have a lot of time. Maybe we can maximum 2 weeks for this decision. What is the cost of reversing it? So if you're going to build a big project in a new technology, there is a possible big cost of reversing it. What are the risks and opportunities? So yeah, the risks are a possible rewrite. The risks are it's a technology that's too bleeding edge and maintainers stop supporting it. But opportunities are it could be the next wave of technology that everybody's excited about. It enables us to be really fast. And what is our context and appetite for risk? So if I was a startup and Ruby on Rails, say this was like 10 years ago, I would just use Ruby on Rails, right? Because we're prototyping, we can afford to change later on. It's all about the here and now, whereas a bigger company, you're less risk, you maybe have less appetite for risk on a huge project. And this last question, what is the conflict? I think this is a personal one. You don't have to say this as a team, but it's always good to keep in mind, especially also for personal decisions. The reason decision-making is kind of horrible sometimes is there is an underlying conflict that we're dealing with. So for this, say, Ruby on Rails, say that like I've been working in a Java shop and I'm super bored, or I'm really excited about Ruby. I love like dynamic typing, and I have to do all of these like compiling and the conflict is my teammates don't feel the same way. They're happy to, they care about, hey, we've got a good stack going here and we know how everything works, and so that's a big conflict. And you can just be aware of it yourself, and it helps you not get too tunnel visioned. In terms of how long you can take for a decision, I just want to give another example. I gave an example before of, say, a big project where you don't have time. Here's the team that built the Flutter framework, which is Google's cross-platform mobile framework. And they had to choose a language. So they decided on Dart, and they wrote this great blog post about why they chose Dart. And I asked them, how long did it take to survey and decide on a language? And they said it probably took a couple of months to survey and decide. I think the longest part was us admitting to ourselves that we needed a new language. So a couple of months. But the language you choose for a framework that you're about to publish is very hard to reverse. Step 2, check in with our emotions. So I did this with my team. We had you need some level of trust in your team. If you don't want to call it emotions, call it concerns and things you're excited about. So yeah, as stickies, put up your concerns, put up things you're excited about, brainstorm what's the best case, worst case, get it all out there in front of the team on the whiteboard. And then think, okay, the things that we're worried about, or the things that we're maybe unrealistically excited about, what information would enrich our intuitions? And then this last question, again, very good for personal decisions, is something or someone else influencing me? So this obviously happens in person if you're going to buy some clothing and you ask the sales assistant, do I look good in this shirt? And, you kind of want to please them and make the sale. I had a similar situation once. I was working on a Java API for a pretty big project. We were in the early stages of the project, so maybe it was week 4. And the technical director, someone way above our team, came and said, Duana, I think we've missed our chance to use Scala. I think Scala's kind of where it's at, and well, he probably didn't say that. He probably said it much more professionally. But he really wanted to use Scala, and then I took this decision to the team, and we ended up rewriting and using Scala. And I wonder, how influenced was I by the fact that this was someone a couple of levels above in the management? Step 3, list the options. All right, so for our example, should we use Ruby on Rails for our next big project? And we've decided as a team that our goal is to develop faster. JSPs are way out. What are the options? Obviously there's yes and no. Are there any other options? Well, it really, again, depends on your context. Are you saying for this project? Are you saying for the whole organization? And maybe you can brainstorm some more options. So I kept this slide. I was working at Clue, and I originally had it in the Clue-branded slides, and I just love this slide. Clue is a female health app that lets you track your period. I hope they don't mind that I kept this just because I thought it was brilliant that this was one of their stock photos. So there is a third option in there. No, let's not use Ruby on Rails for the next big project, but let's use it for a smaller project because we want to evaluate it. Step 4, evaluate the options. So again, this is something you can do with a whiteboard, with stickies. You can use a very simple technique. So there are heaps of decision-making techniques out there. For example, there's minimax, minimizing the maximum damage, or maximax, maximizing the maximum win. But a simple pros and cons will get us a long way. And instead of calling it pros and cons, I called it benefits and opportunities. and costs and risks. And I think because opportunities and risks are just as important. Sometimes we don't think, especially me, I'm kind of risk averse. I don't often think of opportunities. Once you've got everything out on the whiteboard, you can kind of find the common elements. And here, for our thing of should we use Ruby on Rails, just an example, like under the yes option, the benefits and opportunities are faster development, obviously. Maybe we stay up to date in the industry. And the risks or costs are, it's a risky evaluation to do on a big project. It requires learning. It will lead to a fragmented tech stack, and it will delay the project if we have to learn. What you can do then is you can vote. Like say everyone gets five dots. Put votes on where the group thinks are the most important factors, relevant. You can put question marks for things where you say, okay, I think we need to clarify this with some more information, or I don't think this is relevant. And then you can look for the trade-offs, right? So this is the most important trade-off for the yes option. It's fast development, that it delays the project. For the no, but for a smaller object, the goodest thing is that it doesn't delay the big project, but there will be more to rewrite later. And then for the no, never, single tech stack is really what we want, but painful development is what we don't want. So this is making the decision hopefully more obvious for your team of what the hard trade-off is. Step 5, are we ready to decide, do we need more info? Step 6 is build consensus. So this is where we're striving to see, do we have agreement in the team? And I really recommend that you agree on a consensus fallback method because it is hard. I'll go through some examples. You can agree on the main trade-off usually. That's something easy to get agreement on. You can map out your position. So what we did, we had the 3 options. We put where each team member would make the decision, and we saw there were 3 in the middle for the second option. There was 1 for the first option and 1 for the third. So it already made it clear how the team felt about the decision. And then we did a consensus check. It was like, okay, what if we went for the majority rule in this case? How would people feel about that? Give your how you feel between 1 and 5. And I think we got like a 2 and a 5, 2 and 4 and 5. And when you have a 2, you're like, okay, we need to talk more and hear the concerns of the person who's not ready to go ahead. There might be an option for mutual benefit. So in our case, there was one person who wanted to adopt the new technology and the rest were like cautious. And the mutual option for benefit was, well, let's not do it for the big project, but let's do it as a prototyping thing. Let's use it in the next, let's have a hackathon and learn about it together as a team. And yeah, if you can't agree how to move forward. Here are some ways. Some fallbacks. You can agree that the leader will decide if you can't move forward. You can agree that you'll have more research. You can have a vote where the minority is happy to go with the majority vote because they know we have to make progress. You can survey experts. So if you've got friends in some similar situations in other companies, get a few other experts to weigh in or give your opinion, give you more information. And you can agree on first steps or a sub-problem. So often you can have like an intermediate kind of approach that still leaves options open and gives you a bit more time to assess or do a spike. And a friend of mine said, it's really important to at least have something that you agree on after this process, because maybe you've spent like 2 hours or 3 hours talking. You really want to go away feeling like you've made some progress. You really want to have an island of certainty in the sea of uncertainty, is how she put it. I really recommend sleeping on it, and this means as a team just saying, okay, we think we're here, but in a week, let's see. And I think for me, I've done 180 turns, right, after having slept on something. It's a way for you to like not be too attached to your decision when you come back and revisit. Please document it. Not only will it help new team members understand why things are the way they are, it'll help you evaluate your decisions in the future. You'll be able to look back and say, yeah, was that a good decision? How did it work out? yeah, in the future evaluate it. So here's some resources. I've read a few of these books. The Collaboration Explained is brilliant for teamwork, especially it's software engineering based. There's a wonderful talk by Charity Majors called A Young Lady's Guide to Technical Decision Making, which actually goes into the technical aspects. She's an infrastructure engineer, so it's a bit from her perspective. And yeah, there's like this great blog post on how to do architectural decision records by Michael Nygaard. Whew, we made it. Thank you for your attention. Oh,
the slide of books, can you put again?
Oh yes, I can. I'll just say my thanks. Well, thank you to, obviously, Clue, where I got to try this process out. Thanks to my colleagues at SoundCloud that gave me input. I really want to fashion this process. I'm interested in your feedback. Thanks to Codemotion and Duana in particular. Thanks to this wonderful blog post that gave me all these pebbles. And these pebbles in the background are from the speaker stairs. And I want to close on this. So the art of technical decision making, for me, is making the decision obvious as a collective brain. Grazie. Yes. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Oh, we have questions. All right, amazing.
Yep. Hi, Duana. Thanks for the amazing talk.
Thank you.
Do you have any instruments? Sorry, guys.
Oh.
Do you have any instruments you use to generate options, as you said? Or do you just do the dot voting and putting stuff on the whiteboard, as you said? Or is there anything in particular you use?
So the question is, are there any techniques to generate...
Or tools.
Tools
whatever,
to generate other options. I think the brainstorming is the best case and looking at things. Unfortunately not. I think that's a really hard one. But you can, I think that's where the different perspectives coming together, when you hold multiple ideas in your head at the once, you can see, is there a common aspect of things?
Right.
Can we go halfway? Going halfway is obviously one technique, but no, it does take creativity.
There's one thing called, I don't know if you heard about it, popcorn flow, which kind of helps with regards to that.
Popcorn flow?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I can expand on that later, maybe. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great.
Hi. What do you think about having a plan B? Is it possible?
Sorry, could you...
Having a plan B.
Plan B. Oh, yes. That is a great case, yes. That's definitely something that you can agree on as a team. Like, we try this thing, and at some point we switch over to this plan B. Yes, absolutely.
And it is possible to keep the plan B with an important architectural decision?
So it really depends what your plan B is for. If it's for a big release launch, plan Bs really make sense. If it's for an architectural decision, a spike might be better, because I've seen people do this. They have parallel, concurrent solutions going, and it just gets harder the more you invest in the alternative solution to give it up, right? So I would say a spike for an architectural plan B, or a small project, always some kind of smaller test case.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Anybody else? Otherwise, feel free to chat with me after. Thank you. Thanks, Alicia, as well.